I feel like we gotta have this conversation like every other month, but here we are, I guess. Welcome back to What Industry Will AI Take Over Next? The game show where we decide what industry AI will take over next. Out of these options, what do you think AI is taking over next? If you said all of the above, you're right, but we're gonna talk about this one specifically. If you've been sentient and conscious for the past few years, you'll know that AI has been the biggest buzzword of like the past 2-3 years. This crazy concept of a machine brain that's going to take over every single aspect of human life as we know it. Okay, we're not there yet, but we're kind of getting there. Whether it's making your morning coffee or driving you to work, AI is sneaking its way into pretty much every facet of our life. And the majority of the time, it doesn't cause a huge issue until it breaks into the creative arts field. If you've been on Twitter in the past year or so, which if you haven't, God bless you. The platform has essentially turned into, amongst other things, a battleground between pro and anti-AI users. AI image generation is something that's super popular, and especially as it gets better and better, people are starting to use it more and more. Kind of like the AI-generated Studio Ghibli images. Those things had people going crazy. And artists are not very happy about this. One, because of the ethics used to train AI models, and two, because it's just putting them out of a job. It's becoming a huge war that people are still kind of in now, but AI has seeped itself into far more than just image generation. There's something even more sinister that even the most influential people have been using in this field. Oh my God. That's crazy. We're going to talk about AI and music on a music channel? Who would have thought? Just like all the other creative arts, AI has seeped its way into music, but in a much more lazy fashion, if that makes any sense. We're starting to see people tout AI as a tool similar to Auto-Tune and use it on large mainstream projects. I don't think that's good for a number of reasons, which we will get into. So strap up and buckle in, because we're going to talk about AI in mainstream music. My name is Henry, I love music, this is where I talk about it. I'm not great at intros, so let's just get into it. Now, before we keep going, I want to differentiate AI and music into two different categories. Over here, we have AI effects, which is going to be categorized as like voice overlays and different kind of things like that. And over here, we have generative AI music, which is like using a text box to create new music using AI. We are not going to talk about that one because that one is a whole lot more to get into. We are going to talk about AI effects because that's what's being used in mainstream. Now, there are instances of AI effects being used in music before this, but I want to take a trip down memory lane to last year and talk about the first time where I think AI was not necessarily normalized in mainstream music, but definitely noticeable. And who are we going to talk about other than the internet's favorite schizophrenic? Kanye West. I have avoided this man like the plague in these videos because you know why. He's talked about a lot of stuff recently and none of it good. But let's walk back to last summer where he released Vultures 2, the second collab album with Ty Dolla $ign. Now, there's a lot of things I could say sonically about this album. I could talk about how it just doesn't sound very good. I could talk about how some of the songs were just ripped from YouTube using an MP3 downloader. I could talk about a lot of things that I didn't like about this album, but the one I want to talk about right now is AI. As this album released and sat around for a little bit, people started to realize that there were verses on a couple songs that just didn't feel like Kanye. Throughout the Vultures era, I guess we'll call it, Kanye's verses had been kind of different. They were slow, they didn't really have any substance, and the bars in there were okay at best. It just didn't seem like it was his old self performing these bars. So that's why when Vultures 2 came out, and a majority of his verses on this album were the exact same as the ones I talked about, there were two songs that sounded just really different. Specifically on the songs Field Trip and Sky City, the verses sounded better, but also worse. I'll explain. The flow of the verses was a lot better. The lyrics were a lot better. But Kanye didn't sound like Kanye. True, it was his voice and his tone of speech, but the way he spoke was just really different. And then it was found out that he used AI on both of those songs. I think it's also important to explain what AI was being used, because a lot of people just say that AI was used in some form of media, and they don't really say what it is or explain what it does. And me, being a little bit of a technical nerd, I'm going to explain what it is. The AI that was being used and the AI that we're going to talk about for a majority of this video is retrieval-based voice conversion. According to Wikipedia, it's an open source voice conversion AI algorithm that enables realistic speech-to-speech transformations, accurately preserving the intonation and audio characteristics of the original speaker. So essentially what it means is someone would record themselves rapping over a song, and then that RCV algorithm would be used to overlay someone's voice onto that track, so it would sound like someone else was performing it. And this wasn't necessarily a new concept. We had seen it being used a lot, but a majority of the time it was just like on TikTok for memes. The most mainstream use of RCV was like making Patrick sing Pink Pony Club, and that was about it. But Kanye caught wind of it and I guess thought it would be pretty cool to overlay his own voice onto a song that he was going to perform on anyways. So what would end up happening with these albums is they would either receive a reference track or just the complete track in general with someone else's vocals on it, and just Kanye would just overlay his own vocals. And I don't really think I have to explain why. This is just really lame. There's a couple reasons why this sucks, but the main reason, in my opinion, is it's just really lazy. Kanye was one of the greatest musical geniuses we had ever seen, so it's no surprise that he'd be able to create something to a really great caliber without using AI. He has all the equipment and all the studio space he needs to just go in and rap. But for whatever reason, this is what he chose, and it's just really lazy. But along with it being lazy, it just set a really bad precedent for the industry. Now, to be fair, we're at a point in Kanye's career where whenever he does things like this that are really out there or out of the box, they're no longer considered like generational or genius, and everyone starts copying him because of some other things that he's done. And we're starting to see a lot of people call him out on his behavior. But he is still a very big artist, and this is still a precedent that he's setting. And with that precedent being set, artists don't have to be as scared anymore of using this RCV technology on their own songs. And this was also a precedent that Kanye set for himself, because he unfortunately released another album. Recently, Kanye released a partially unfinished album called Bully. It was his first solo album in a while. He had been hyping it up for a good bit, and when it was finally time to share it with the world, he just fully put it out there that half of it was AI. And it's using that same RCV technology. He just produced the tracks, get someone to rap over it, and then put his own voice over it, for some reason. Because of this, and the fact that the beats in the album were just kind of lazily produced, it wasn't anything crazy, no one really talked about it that much. I believe he also removed it from whatever platform he shared it on. I don't think you can listen to it right now, but from the bits and pieces I did hear, it was just a lot of like really basic soul samples or jazz samples with AI verses over it. You didn't miss anything. So Kanye is using a lot of AI. It's honestly not that surprising considering the other things that he's been doing and the things that he's been saying. But what about someone that's in a little bit better of a light right now? Someone that had been teasing an album for years upon years, and when it finally delivered, the same thing was discovered. You're right, it's Playboi Carti. Whoa, wrong image. Okay, I get that he's been teasing an album for a while, but this guy hasn't dropped yet. The AI of him is just fan-made. I'm being haunted by the ghost of Frank Ocean. Can't say I'm complaining though. Playboi Carti, the very popular rapper, released his album Music just a few weeks ago. This album was 5 years in the making. It had been fake released, delayed, canceled about 9 different times, and it finally dropped. It was insanely long. It had vibes for essentially every single Carti fan, including the ones that like AI music. Yeah, if you didn't know, I'm sorry this is how you found out. It was found out that Playboi Carti used that same VRC technology on the songs Rather Lie and Fine Shit. I feel so old saying that. Similar to the way people discovered this about Kanye, the verses on these songs were just drastically different from the things that Carti had done on the album. And at first people didn't really suspect anything because one of Carti's main gimmicks is switching his voice around from being super low to super high to singing, rapping, all that kind of stuff. But on Rather Lie specifically, Carti was making himself seem like he had the voice of an angel sitting next to the pearly gates. Which in hindsight, I don't think Carti is gonna get to see those. I'm sorry. Carti was singing really well, and not just on an auto-tune standard. He was hitting all kinds of crazy notes, he was going super high, super low, and again, it wasn't just like the bit that he had been keeping up the whole album, he was genuinely just like having these unreal ranges. And why was he having these unreal ranges? Because it wasn't his voice. In very similar Kanye fashion, he received the reference tracks for these songs, overlaid his own vocals on them, and just released them. Now, I do think in Carti's scenario, this is a little bit lighter of a sentence, because instead of just being super lazy, rapping things you could have rapped on your own like Kanye, I don't think Carti could have done this on his own. Don't get me wrong, Carti is a great performer and has a lot of range, but I just don't think he would have been able to pull off a performance like this just on his own. Is it still lazy? Yes. Do I still not like it? Yes. But is it the lesser of two evils? Also yes. Now, Carti has also denied these accusations, but him denying the accusations came from an academic's tweet, and believing anything that academic says is kind of like using ChatGPT for legal advice. It just is not a good idea. So because of this, it's very widely believed that Carti used AI. It's not 100% confirmed, I have to say, but it's very likely. So AI is in mainstream music, but you may be asking, what harm does it actually do if this is how people are using it? They're using their own voices on their own music, and the people in the reference tracks are allowing them to overlay onto their voice. So what's the harm? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it might be a little deeper than you realize. On a music industry standard, this is setting a bad precedent for mainstream music going forward. If it becomes more and more normalized for artists to just overlay their own vocals onto someone else's voice, we're not even going to be listening to the artists anymore. It reminds me of the ship. I can't remember the name. I'll put it on screen. But it's a ship in a museum, and they keep replacing the original pieces of wood with new wood after it like rots and stuff. So the whole question is it even the same ship if all this stuff is being replaced? So if you have an artist that doesn't produce their own music, doesn't write their own lyrics, and now doesn't even rap or sing in their own voice over these songs, is it really the same artist? And also because of that, it's going to become a lot less easy to realize when there is like a fake AI version of these people. When an artist gets super comfortable using AI for this kind of stuff, people are going to use their vocals on their own songs, on songs they don't want themselves to be on. It's going to be very hard to tell them apart. Right now, it probably won't be very hard, but in the future, it may be virtually indistinguishable. And then even past a music industry standpoint, VRC is just a dangerous technology in general. With it becoming more normalized and widely available, people can use this for deepfakes, people can use this for scams, people can use this for all sorts of malicious activities. Just imagine the ripple effect that VRC is going to cause. Your grandma might get scammed by a VRC voice overlay of the President of the United States saying he needs $50 from her. All because the scammer listened to a Kanye song and found out how to do it. Now, is that jumping to absolutely insane conclusions? Absolutely. Can that still happen though? Probably. AI is already being massively used in scams and stuff like that, and I think us seeing VRC in mainstream music is just kind of confirming that it's going to get even better and that it's going to get even more dangerous. Now, you may still be at a standpoint of, it doesn't affect me, why should I care? Similar to what I was saying earlier, this technology could be very dangerous. The more VRC becomes normalized, your own voice could get used and stolen and overlaid on someone else's voice to do a number of things. And that's not good, because you might not be in a position of influence where you can just say, hey guys, that wasn't me, someone took my voice. You might just be a regular person living an everyday life that ends up in this situation. Now again, is that kind of an insane conclusion to go to? Yes, but it's also not unrealistic. So you might be asking, what do we do about it? I think for the most part, we're doing all that we can. There's not really a lot you can do to convince someone with this much money and this much influence to change how they do their stuff, other than bullying them online, which is kind of what's already happened. I'd say less with Carti and more of Kanye, but that's not really the point. I think the more people that talk about how this stuff is just not as good objectively as the artist's regular music that they've created, the more people will start to realize that this isn't a good thing that we want in music. And that's a very hard battle, one that looks very bleak and very uphill. But I don't think it's a non-zero chance. And I didn't even talk about generative AI music and like dead people's voices being used to train these AIs. That's a whole other topic. But I think for the most part, AI in music has gotten to a point where it's becoming normalized to an extent where we're losing just the integrity of our artists. Now, with that being said, 98% of artists don't use AI, and there's still plenty of music to enjoy, especially from small artists. But as we get closer into the future, you gotta keep your ears a little more open than usual and try to detect these kind of things. Alright, I think that should about do it for this video. This is mainly what I really wanted to talk about. To get on more of a real note, my life has been extremely busy, and personally I don't feel like my videos have been living up to, like, I guess, the standard I'd set for myself with previous videos. And I want to make sure that I'm talking about things that people are actually interested in. So please don't be afraid to suggest something for me to talk about in the comments, because I read all of them. But I do have some videos planned for the future. I'm waiting for some albums to drop so I can do a kind of rollout / lore analysis. If you've been watching my shorts, you probably know which ones I'm talking about. But overall, let me know if you guys want to see more artist / album focused videos, or more like, I guess, think piece or like yap session videos like this one. With that being said, that's all that I have for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.